Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Get Wealth podcast. I have a very special guest, Ryan Huber. We're really excited to get into this because we share quite a few of the same interests. Usually on this podcast, I talk to people that are, building wealth somehow, which of course a lot of people are interested in, but you're also a pilot and you've done some really cool aviation so far in your career. So I'm excited to get into all that, and thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate your time, and yeah, I'm excited to provide some value to some people and talk about all this.
That's great. So let's just start off with kind of your journey up to this point, because it seems like it can't be that long of a journey, right? Like, how old are you? 25, 24 the most?
Yeah, I'm 24 currently. Yeah, 24 currently. So yeah, I'll just kind of go back to like high school or adolescent years. My whole life I knew I wanted to get into aviation. I grew up around small airports. My grandparents would take me to the local airport and I'd go watch airplanes on the weekends, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. So aviation's always been a passion of mine and always something that I wanted to get involved with. And then when I was 18, my senior year of high school, I ended up getting my private pilot's license and ended up applied and got accepted to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach. And so I ended up going there, and I didn't pursue aviation professionally from a pilot sense at first. I was more interested in like the aviation business side of things because I've always been very business minded, always had little side hustles or businesses that I've ran since I was, a kid. And went there for about a year. I had a scholarship, but I was still paying a pretty hefty sum to be able to attend college there. And ultimately I said, okay, I can either pay for the 4-year degree, maybe come out and work in a business role for a company like Gulfstream, Embraer, something along those lines. Or I could try and get all my ratings and pursue a professional pilot career. And I could have done that through Embry-Riddle, but seeing how much people were paying to do that, I thought it was a deterrent, because I was like, I don't want to be $250,000 to $300,000 in debt and then just be a flight instructor. I thought that was a very scary position to be in. So I ended up leaving Embry-Riddle after my first year there and went to a trade school that you're probably familiar with, ATP Flight School, and did their accelerated program, got all my pilot ratings, and became a flight instructor when I was 19. I got my first flight instructor position out in Arizona, worked for a couple flight schools out there. And then just through networking, I got on with a charter company flying right seat on a Citation CJ3, which is like a light private jet for people that aren't familiar with aviation. And then did that for about a year. And then I was blessed as well, just through networking and some friends, to be able to apply for an opportunity over in Cairo, Egypt on a Gulfstream G600. And it was one of those things where I was like, I'm not qualified for this job. I'm probably not going to get it, but I'm going to apply and see what happens. And sure enough, they liked me and wanted somebody that was young and hungry that could kind of be molded into what they wanted. And I got the job, and it provided a good 6-figure salary for me and some amazing just life opportunities to go travel the world, fly one of the best jets in private aviation, and kind of build some income. But it was cool because the schedule was 45 days on, 45 days off. So we were on a rotation. So I would go out to Egypt for 45 days and work out there, but we were only flying maybe 2 to 3 times a week. So I had a lot of downtime while I was in Egypt. And I also had a lot of downtime at home, half the year off. And talking to most pilots, they either invest their money into other things or they spend all their money in their off time. So I was like, well, I don't want to be the latter and just spend all my money and just kind of sit around and rely on one source of income. They say the average millionaire has 7 sources of income, or everyone preaches being diversified, having other streams. So I always wanted to get into something else and run my own business. And that's kind of what led me to real estate. I always knew that real estate was probably the best vehicle to get wealth, no pun intended. but most millionaires are made through real estate. And so I was like, well, how do I get involved in real estate? I can't really buy property at this point. I don't have the income history or a bunch of money sitting around. So I came across real estate wholesaling. And for people that don't know what wholesaling is, it's basically where you get a property that's distressed under contract. And then instead of closing on it yourself, you assign or flip that contract to another investor for an assignment fee or a profit. So I figured out that business model, took a course on it, and said, okay, I'm going to commit to this for a year, see if it works, focus on it. And after about 4 months of consistently marketing, and my primary marketing for it at first was just cold calling, I landed a contract on a condo in Arizona, and I had no idea what I was doing. It was honestly really intimidating, but I was able to assign the contract and get the deal done. At this point, like, I didn't even know what a HUD was, like a settlement statement. Didn't really know anything about real estate, but just knew the business idea was possible. And I flipped the contract on that condo, made $4,000. That was the proof of concept for it. And then I kept doing it, reinvested the money into more cold calling, hired more virtual assistants in the Philippines, and built out a real estate wholesaling company from that. And did over 6 figures I guess you could call it my first year. And then last year did just shy like $500,000 in revenue. About 45% of that was profit. And yeah, that's what got me into real estate. And then now I'm just trying to get into bigger real estate investments, bigger deals, and ultimately buy and hold properties, because you can make a lot of money flipping properties, but no one becomes massively wealthy just by flipping properties. You have to buy and hold, and ultimately the passive income and the equity is what's going to make you wealthy long term.
Yeah, that's so cool, dude. Like, the first year of that story is basically identical to me. So my grandparents got me into aviation. I applied to Riddle, but instead of going to ATP, I did the 4 years at Riddle, and now I'm a flight instructor in that scary position you were talking about. And that's kind of what led me to getting into real estate, is, just kind of having my back up against the wall, having to get myself out of the situation I put myself in. Flight instructing is still a cool job, but the way you said it sounds a lot cooler, honestly, going to fly Gulfstream in Cairo, Egypt. So that's amazing, man. It's crazy you had that perspective at that stage, like your first year of college. When I was, going through school, there was only one thing in front of me: that's finish school, that's get the ratings and go and get the job and go on the career path. And then it was like a little over a year ago now, I read the book Think and Grow Rich, and it just shifted everything for me. And I started this podcast and talked to people like you. And now it's just like this crazy paradigm shift of what's possible out there. Like, I get to hear a story like that.
Yeah.
Literally, we basically were kind of like the same. And then you just chose this different path, and it led you to all these cool opportunities. And it just shows how insanely crazy it is. Things can be if you just, take a little bit of a risk, or, kind of bet on yourself a little bit, which sounds like what you did. So that's awesome, man.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I was really lucky in realizing that early. I mean, I've got nothing against a 4-year degree or anybody's decisions, but for me, I was just like, this is going to be a lot of debt, and I feel like I can go faster if I move in a little bit different of a direction. And so I took the risk, and it paid off. Ultimately, I got blessed and lucky with some of the positions I got. So, I mean, I'm thankful for that. It could have ended differently. But yeah, I'm happy that it worked out the way it did.
So are you still with no, obviously you're not in Cairo, Egypt. So are you flying still as privately?
So I'm not flying professionally right now. I might get back into it if the right opportunity presents itself. I do have a small airplane that I own, Van's RV6A, so a little tricycle gear, 2-seat experimental airplane. So that's been fun. So I'm still involved in aviation, and I always want to be in some capacity. But basically what happened was the job that I had kind of during the COVID situation, the height of it, we had 4 pilots. So it was a 4-pilot rotation doing 45 on, 45 off. And then they wanted to go to a 3-pilot rotation doing 60 days on, 30 days off and not have any pay increase. And so I was like, well, this is a great job, but I don't want to spend over 2/3 of my life in Cairo, Egypt. So it just wasn't as valuable to me. And then thankfully I had the real estate wholesaling company. So I had other income coming in. So I was able to step away from that and then just focus on the real estate company.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So the wholesaling company, are you still managing and operating that, or have you kind of extracted yourself from that business?
So yeah, I mean, I still have it. I've scaled it back over the last couple of months. I've been trying to get into bigger deals, more like multifamily acquisitions and multifamily syndications. So I've got some multifamily deals I'm working on currently. We had a 6-unit property in Texas that we were going to close on, but it didn't work out. But yeah, I'm trying to focus more on bigger investment deals, still doing some wholesaling. But yeah, right now I think it's kind of a shift phase for me. Just trying to get into other avenues of real estate.
Yeah. So I started wholesaling. I did my first deal in August. It was just a little deal, and I'm doing it virtually, probably similar to you. So I'm in Arizona, and I'm wholesaling in Indianapolis and just Indiana in general. So I did my first deal in August. I'm on deal number 6 right now, but you know, sounds like you scaled it pretty quickly from start to finish. What was that process like? You were calling yourself and then hired a VA, or what did that progression look like for you?
Yeah, so I was calling myself. I mean, even before I really got serious about it, I was driving for dollars and like throwing up bandit signs, even back like 2017, 2018. But I wasn't consistent with it. So I didn't have success until 2019 is when it was like April 2019 that I made the decision to, okay, like I'm going to consistently market and focus on this until it works, and I'm not going to stop. And then that's kind of the period that 4 months later, I was able to close the first deal. But from there, or at the beginning of that period in April of 2019, I was calling, and then I did hire a VA pretty much right off the bat after I understood the dialer system, just because it was so cheap to like arbitrage that time. And then I did have the pilot job, so it just made sense. So I hired a VA for $5.50 an hour, and you can honestly get them for cheaper than that. But I paid a VA, I think it was like 20 or 25 hours a week to cold call some lists. And they were bringing in a couple leads a week. And I had a friend who was kind of a mentor to me at the time. And he was like, just keep going until you get 100 leads, because it's a numbers game and you might get 30, 40 leads and you still don't get a deal. And then you feel discouraged, but he's like, trust me, just get to 100 leads. And then if you still don't have a closed deal, then we can kind of audit and course correct. It might be, your sales skills or, your offering prices that are the problem. But until then, just keep going. So I kept going, and I think it was a lead 74 that I was able to get a deal under contract. And then after that closing, I just continued to invest money into cold callers and built it from like 1 cold caller to 2 to 3. And then at the height of it, I think we had 9 cold callers, all using ZenCall, just cold calling lists and doing everything virtually. And then I tried different other marketing streams like RVM, SMS. We did PPC for a while, which worked pretty well. And so I just kept reinvesting into marketing and generating more leads. And then I brought on some acquisitions people, and then they started to do the acquisitions and sales process for me. And I was more of just the oversight, dispositions, transaction coordinator, things like that. So, I mean, it was quick, but also slow at the same time, I feel like, because it was over the course of a few years and just trying to build and learn. But yeah, I just like stayed consistent on the marketing that worked and trust the process, which I think is the most important thing. I think with any business model, especially with wholesaling, people get discouraged because it's not easy and it takes a lot of leads to get a deal, or like you really have to be persistent. And a lot of people wash out because they just don't have the persistence to continue and hear those no's and the FUs until they finally find that property that makes sense and get it under contract.
Yeah, it's no joke. A quote my English teacher said back in high school was, "Simple's not easy." People hear something like wholesaling real estate. Oh, you get under contract, you find a buyer, you flip the contract, and you make an assignment fee. That sounds simple, but it's not easy, right? You go through so many hours of just calling and doubting. Does this work? Am I doing it wrong? Am I just not good? All these things that you start telling yourself when you go 6 months without getting a deal or getting anything under contract. But that's when you got to double down and keep pushing. You're getting close to some progress there, which is what it takes, and that's what you did. So and that was for me. I think it took, let's see, it took me about 5 months, I think, to go from when I actually got serious about calling lists to get my first deal, which 5 months, depending on how you look at it, can seem like not that long, but to sit and call who knows how many thousands of numbers, that gets pretty old.
Yeah, exactly. So it can definitely be daunting, but like what I tell people is, I think the median salary in the United States is like 56,000 right now. So it's like, let's say you make 56,000 a year in your 9 to 5, and it takes you 6 months or even a year to do your first deal, but you make ten or even $15,000 on that one deal. That's a huge increase from your salary off just one deal. So it's like, even, your marketing efforts or your time might take 5 months, but in 5 months, boom, all of a sudden you've got an extra 10 to 15K. You just increased what you were earning by 15, 20% or more. And that's significant. So you got to look at it that way and kind of play it long term. And then ultimately, just like anything, like the better you get, then it's going to start to happen more frequently. And growth within any business is exponential. It's not linear, and it's going to have ups and downs, but like the more consistent you are on it, then it's going to start to come more frequently, and then you're going to grow off that. So it might take you 6 months to do one, but then the next one comes in 2 months, and then you start doing a deal a month, and you start doing 2 to 3 deals a month, and then all of a sudden you've got a multiple 6-figure, even 7-figure business within a couple of years. Whereas if you took a different path and just followed the corporate route, you would never get to that kind of income potential in that time frame.
Yeah, that's a good quote. I like what you said there, that it's not linear, it's exponential. Because if it took you this amount of work to get to that point of, oh, like this is cool, I'm excited about it, and you're thinking about the next one, oh, I'm gonna have to do that all again, that can be another mental kind of thing to go through. But if you think about it as, well, now instead of, probably like your social media as well, right? Like the first 10,000 is probably harder than from 10,000 to 20,000. It's that curve, and that's kind of a way to shift your mindset, because that's really all it's about. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about the wholesaling business. So I kind of beat myself up a little bit, but it's part of the process, I guess, as far as scaling, because I hired a VA after deal number 3, thinking, okay, it's time to just, like you said, arbitrage that time. And it was going well for probably the first week or so. It was like talking 2 or 3 leads a day. But then it seemed like there was just a law that passed, or I'm not sure what. I heard rumors about them cracking down on that sort of calling marketing. But my numbers just got marked as spam, and I would buy like 12 new numbers, and I tried like 100 different things, and just no leads were coming in after that. And so I eventually just kind of had to take 2 steps back and start getting on the phones myself again, which has kind of pumped it back up a little bit. But now I'm at the point where it's like, I want to, spend my time doing the higher level activities, but I can't go back and make that same mistake. Did you ever have an issue with getting marked as spam, or how do you deal with your cold callers?
Yeah. So, I mean, cold callers, you're going to have a lot of turnover, or there's a lot of cold callers that aren't good. So I think hiring the right people, even VAs, is one of the most difficult parts of the real estate wholesaling business. Because like one VA with really good English can be exponentially better than like 5 VAs with shitty English, or they're slacking off. They're not putting in the hours, or they're just trying to like kind of fudge their time and get through the day. And it's an exhausting job to be a VA cold caller, because you're hearing a lot of no's. You know, it's very exhausting for these people to do, especially Filipinos are doing it all night long. So I mean, I think there is a lot of burnout just on the VA, like human performance side. And then, like you said, there's been like the Traced Act passed, I think a year ago ish, which I don't know all the intricacies of it, but I know that it kind of cracked down on cold call marketing. It hurt a lot of people with SMS marketing. I know a lot of people are getting their response rate was like dropping like crazy from that. So, I mean, there's different things that have been implemented, but I just kept going with it and buying more lists and just trying to go more bulk. And we would see our cost per lead fluctuate a lot. Like at one point it was probably like $12 to $15 a lead. And then at another point it was as high as like $70 a lead. So, I mean, I just think you have to monitor it as much as possible, and then just like try and isolate the variables. So it's like, okay, is it the caller? Maybe yes or no. Is it the list? Is it the phone numbers? And yeah, we were buying new phone numbers every week. I know there's different sites that you can use to check them. Where at one point we outsourced the VAs to an agency, and they had a system where they were checking numbers for spam. But we would just buy new numbers every week. And we were using Zen Call, which I think it's I think it's $3 or $5 for a phone number. But you can actually, if you talk to Zen Call, you can negotiate with them and get the price down per number to $1 a number. So if you are using them, you could try and negotiate with them, get a better price per number if you're buying a lot of numbers. So that could help. But yeah, I would just say like isolate all the variables and try and pinpoint what it is. Or instead of just hiring one VA, maybe hire like 2 or 3 at a time, because then it encourages them to compete against each other, and then you can see their metrics. So instead of just like having one VA and you're like, oh, like, you know, their cost per lead is like $50 a lead, or they're making this many dials, getting like 1 lead a day. Then if you have 3, then you can kind of cross-reference and be like, oh, Cindy's getting, you know, 3 leads a day, Johnny's getting 1 or a lead every other day. You know, what's going on, you know, and then, you know, is it the script? Is it his tonality? What is he saying on the phone? You listen to the phone calls, and you can kind of pinpoint things.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I appreciate that. I think there's a lot of, you know, a lot of smoke around, you know, what actually works, and, you know, to see from someone who's actually doing it and operating a successful business. That's good advice for anyone listening. What was I gonna track back to? Okay, yeah. So with your wholesale business, you've been doing this a few years now, and you said the main shift is that you want to build some sort of a, you know, generational wealth, some sort of a passive income, more reliable stream of income, rather than just trading it your time for another job. Like wholesaling, it's really a job. When did that shift change, and what kind of gave you that perspective shift?
Yeah, so I mean, probably like 6 months ago. It was kind of like right after I went into it full time after leaving my aviation job. We had some good success, posted some good months, but I was like slaving away every day, and ultimately it kind of drove me to misery, or I was just like not happy doing it. And kind of like you said, I was like trading one job for another. And nothing against wholesaling. I mean, it's a great way to build active income, but it comes with its challenges. And so I was like, you know, I don't think this is sustainable long term. And I would like to kind of focus more on my happiness. And then ultimately, like, you know, if you make $30,000-$50,000 a month or more, you know, that's fantastic. But then that's active income. You're paying taxes on that, and you're always trying to find your next deal. So I was like, at some point, you know, I've got to think bigger and be like, okay, I don't want to just keep chasing deals and $10,000 to $20,000 checks. You know, how do we build equity? How do we build cash flow? How do we get to the point where a couple of years from now or 5 years from now, like I've got enough passive income to where I don't have to do this if I don't want to. So I think a lot of it was just kind of the job. I was kind of looking at it as like a job more than an investment. And then ultimately just kind of my own mental health was getting kind of crazy from it, just through a lot of headaches with deals. I think if you are more of a buy and hold investor and you have a problem in a deal, like if there's a bunch of liens on title or there's a tenant problem, or something goes bad, like you're not really losing anything if that deal doesn't go through. Whereas a wholesaler, if you're paying like $2,000 per deal in marketing costs, and you know that that's the cost of doing business, then you're going to do everything possible to get that deal to go through, because a lost deal is lost money. So I kind of looked at it that way, and I was like, I'd rather kind of be on the other side and be the cash buyer guy, than dealing directly with. I mean, it's still good to go direct to seller as a cash buyer because you're going to get deals deeper, but there's a lot more headaches, I think, for the wholesaler, because you're the problem solver at the end of the day, and that's where you make your money.
Yeah, I think if someone says they want to be a full-time wholesaler, that would give me a red flag, or at least tell me that they're not going to last a whole entire career in real estate. Because to me, I think wholesaling, what it's done for me mostly is it's a really good way to learn everything. Like you have to learn communicating a property, you have to learn how the process works with title, communicating with sellers. It gives you your sales skills, marketing skills, which are all things that carry over into the other things like the fix and flips, the buy and holds. But if you're going to be just doing wholesaling, forever, that's not really investing. I mean, I would consider it real estate investing, but buy and hold's really where it's at. Like you said, where it's going to, you can build equity, and over the next 30 years, you can double a portfolio. Whereas, just a taxable $10,000 check in the mail is not really going to provide that for you. So I'm totally on the same page.
Yeah, definitely. I think as a starting point, like you said, it's incredible because you learn so much. You learn how to negotiate, you learn how to comp, like you said. And then the pros of it is, if you sell somebody a bad deal, you might make a $10,000 fee, and sweet, you got your money. Or let's say you lose the deal, you might have lost some marketing costs, but that's limited. Whereas if you're the flipper or the investor and you actually take title to the property and it doesn't work out, you could lose tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, or be left with some serious headaches if you don't know what you're doing. So I think, especially just like to learn your own market, and learn what other people are paying for deals as a wholesaler is huge, because you might think that a deal is good, and if you wanted to take that down right away as a rental property or a flip and it doesn't work out, then you screw yourself. But if you go market that contract to other people and get their feedback, and they're like, oh man, this isn't a good deal, I need it 50,000 less than what you have it at, then it's like, oh, okay, like this is where I actually need to be, or like I need to change my frame of mind here and get deals deeper, or like they're thinking about something that I'm not even thinking about. So it's like, this isn't zoned correctly, or it's an odd property, it's a split level, or there's something wrong with the roof that I didn't realize, or the floor plan, or just something that you might not have thought of. Somebody that's more experienced could like give you those pointers. So as you're doing these wholesale deals, you can start to learn these little tricks on what's good, what's bad. And then you realize, once you start to get more involved, like what really is a good deal, what's a bad deal. And then you just kind of know, like there's sometimes where we get a property under contract and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a good deal, like it'll sell. And then we assign it the next day for a $25,000 fee. And it's like, sweet, like I knew that was a good one. But then some of these, you might think it's a good one. You're like, oh yeah, this is great. You market it for 2 weeks. Everyone comes back and says they need it for 30,000 less than what you're asking. And you're like, oh, that's not a good deal. Like, why? And then you learn those things.
Yeah, that's cool. Kind of on that same note, as far as you're transitioning your business model to more of a buy and hold, do you shift the market based on where you're trying to buy, or have you just doubled down in the same markets? Because I know, like, for example, in Indianapolis, there's some pretty good cap rates over there that you can get because property value is quite a bit lower than, Arizona and Phoenix or whatever. And so you can kind of do a little bit better with the cap rates. whereas, as a wholesaling market, maybe it's not the best as we're going to make these big assignments. Are you taking it from that view, or do you have a different one?
I would say I agree with that view, because I've done virtual 100%, because I was in Egypt, then I was in Arizona, and I just moved to Florida about 4 months ago. So I've kind of been all over while doing real estate. So I've done deals in Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Florida, Georgia.
Wow.
I mean, right now, we're primarily looking in Florida, just because I'd rather use it as like a learning experience and be more hands-on, boots on the ground, just to like learn that better. But I also I have a friend of mine who's a business partner in Ohio, and he brings a lot of opportunities my way, and he's crushing it, buying multifamily in Ohio. And he's like, dude, the cap rates are awesome. And I'm like, I'm not opposed to that. So I'm still trying to figure out what works best, to be honest, as far as a buy and hold perspective. So I think there's pros and cons, but for me, I think ideally right now, I'd prefer to be in market, just to be more hands-on and learn it a little bit better, as opposed to being far away and not knowing what's going on.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. One of the things that's blown my mind and kind of shifted my goals for the next year is to kind of similar to you, of buying these properties and keeping them, because you want to transition out of the day job of wholesaling. But just the amount of opportunity there actually is to buy and hold properties without your money, or with creative finance. Have you ever done a creative deal, or are you interested in that?
Yeah, so I'm familiar with creative finance. I've not done a creative finance deal, but I think it's an incredible technique to use, because with seller financing, subject to, there's so many strategies where, like you said, you don't have to put money down, or a little bit of money down, or you don't have to go to a bank for financing. So I think that's incredible, and it's something that we're exploring when we make offers. We'll make an offer for one price, but then we might offer a little bit more if they're willing to do like a 20 or 25% seller carryback, because then it just gives us additional leverage. And then if we can do 75 to 80% with a hard money lender or a bank, and then maybe the seller finances the additional 20 to 25%, then you're basically in it for nothing, and you could take down that deal. Whereas before, you might have to come up with $100,000 or $200,000, or whatever that down payment is, which you might have it. But even if you do have it, if you can get the seller to finance some of the equity, then now you can leverage more money and do more deals. So yeah, I think that's incredibly powerful. So I'd like to deploy that for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly it. That there's so many opportunities out there, especially if you have a wholesaling business, you got to be getting so many leads. How many of those do you think, if you're really doubling down on it, or would be creative deals? Or do you get any feedback from that side of it, or is it all just cash?
So we've pitched creative deals to some of them. We haven't really had success with it, but at the same time, it wasn't, I didn't focus on it hard enough. So if I focused on it harder and really went after it, I think we would have closed some. But I had 2 acquisitions people, and I didn't want to overcomplicate it for them. So I was kind of pitch this, and if there's a creative opportunity, maybe I gave them a few lines just to open the idea up, and then I would take over from there. We had a few that we almost did, but we didn't. But I could probably go back through my lead database and try and generate some seller finance or creative deals just from retail leads that I have. So that's definitely something that I might do.
Yeah. So for me, after the more I learn about real estate and the more I try to do it on my own, it seems like that's just, there's too much opportunity there. I ideally would want to transition completely into real estate, away from aviation, because right now I'm just on the cookie cutter path of get the hours, go to the airlines, do that whole thing. But just the amount of opportunity there is to live on your terms, right? Aviation's cool, but if you're working for someone, it's still a job, and you gotta ask for time off. And that just really doesn't sit well with me, especially in the current job I'm at right now. Do you see yourself kind of more in that picture of just going full-time real estate, or do you want to go into other businesses that are going to free up your time, or that you'll spend your energy on?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I don't like working for somebody. I don't like trading my time for money. So definitely long-term full-time real estate is the goal. I mean, it just depends. I mean, if there might be an opportunity, because like aviation is just more of something that I love to do.
Yeah.
So like if there's an opportunity that presents itself where I still have the time that I want, then I might do it just for fun. But I would never go back to like a full-time aviation job where that's just like my grind every day, or where it would take away from everything else that I want to do.
Yeah. So you have a pretty big social media following. When did that start kicking into play? Was that just kind of, did it happen to be that way, or did you really focus on it? Because I know you can leverage that platform a lot, and pretty much all the businesses that you can think of, there's a place for social media.
Yeah. So my kind of start with social media was back in 2016. I started posting YouTube videos when I was going through ATP. So a lot of it was just like aviation related videos from years ago. Built up a following on YouTube. I've got like 12,000 now, so it's not huge, but it is what it is. And then I've been more active on Instagram, more active on TikTok. A lot of it, to be honest with you, is from like paid giveaways and different like ways to build your Instagram, which I mean, a lot of people like get pissy about that, or like, oh, you got fake followers or whatever. But I mean, I know so many people that leverage that so well and make money from it. So it's like, if you pay a couple grand for like a giveaway or some kind of promotion that brings eyes to your account, but then you have a product to sell and you make 20,000 off that $2,000 investment, or now you have more eyes on you, like your brand is super important. So like your personal brand and like how people find you is everything. So, I mean, I'm not going to lie and say that all of it's like organic and I just grew this big Instagram, because it's not what I did. But at the same time, like I've gotten a lot of eyes on my profile. I've been able to do podcasts like this, or do deals with people through Instagram where they'll bring me an opportunity and then we'll JV on it together. So I think that's super important. And like anything you can do to build your brand presence is huge. And, people buy into people, or people, I think Grant Cardone says like money follows attention. So I'm a big believer in that. So like anything you can put out, is going to help you ultimately. And so a lot of people like to be low key, or like, oh, I'm too cool to put myself out there. And I'm like, well, what do you have to lose? Like, you're just afraid to get judged, or you're just afraid of people's opinions. But yeah, you might get some negative opinions, but think of all the people you can meet, think of all the people you can help out. And just like, ultimately that's kind of why we're here. Is money's great, but how are you going to impact people, or like what legacy do you want to leave? So I think that's really important.
I completely agree. And to kind of go back to your point about the Instagram followers, I mean, there's some accounts that you look at and you could be like, okay, maybe there's something weird here. They post kind of weird things and they have all these followers, but dude, you got a sick Instagram. You're flying jets and you're riding camels and driving Ferraris, and cool. You got cool content. Like I would look at an account like that and believe it if there was 1 million followers. So if it adds up, it adds up.
Yeah. So I think anything you can post is good. And people like to hear people's stories, and like people like authenticity and just people being themselves. So it's like, even if somebody's just starting out and has like no following, no money, it's like post what you're doing and document the process. Because when you do make it, and when you do have something going, then people are able to see what it was like from the beginning. So like people love to see that. And then you might inspire somebody else to get involved in real estate. And like, dude, that's the most rewarding thing for me, is I'll get messages and people will say like, oh, you inspired me to get into aviation, and now I'm a commercial pilot, or now I'm, flying this jet or whatever, or you got me into real estate. Now I'm doing wholesale deals. Like that stuff's awesome. So it's like, at the end of the day, who cares what anybody thinks? But if we're able to do stuff like that for people, then that's huge.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think kind of just to shift the conversation towards what I think is probably more important, because obviously you're able to do all this cool stuff and you've, achieved all these good, milestones that people work so hard for. And it's possible. I mean, obviously you're just a highly effective person, but there's other people that, can achieve probably way more than they would think that they're capable of, but don't. So what do you think that is? Do you have advice on, how to change your mindset, or what helped you to be able to, kind of just chase those things? Can you hear me?
Yeah. I mean, I think, I lost you there for a second, but I've got you. So
Okay.
I think one of the biggest things is just your habits and what you do every day, and just the small things. Like, even for myself, I have to check myself a lot because I'm so big picture oriented and I focus on the goal or the long-term result. And I'm like, oh, I want to make 1 million, or I want to buy 100-unit complex, or have all these big goals. But it's like, break it down into a daily process and say, okay, that's the long-term goal, but like, what are the actionable items I need to get there? So if you're like, all right, I want to do my first wholesale deal in 2022. That's great. But like, what are you doing every day? What are your habits around that? So it's like, okay, how many to get a deal? Let's call it 100 leads. How do I produce 100 leads? Oh, I need to cold call, 10,000 people to produce 100 leads. And then it's like, okay, well, where do I get that list? Okay, I get it here. Okay, how many people do I need to call a day to generate those leads? How many leads do I need per week? So then it's like, what does my day look like? And if you kind of break things down into the day, then you know what you need to do every day, and you can just focus on those small things. So if your goal is do a real estate deal in 2022, but you break that down into, okay, I need to be on the dialer for 4 hours a day and produce a lead a day for 100 days, or I need to go make offers, 5 offers a day on for sale by owners, and at a 30% discount, then that's like an actionable thing. And then it becomes a lot less daunting, and it gives you something to do every day. So then if you're like, okay, I need to make 5 offers a day, you pick up the phone, you make those 5 offers. And if you made those 5 offers, you won the day. So I think if you focus on winning the day or just breaking it down, that changes your perspective a lot. And then also just like auditing your small habits. Like, one thing I've done recently in my personal life is, it's like a fitness kind of discipline challenge, 75 hard by Andy Frisella. I don't know if you've heard of that or not.
Yeah.
So it's like 75 days, no alcohol. You work out twice a day, a gallon of water, 10 pages of reading. And like doing something like that, like it focuses on the disciplines and the small habits. So like, if you want to really change your life or get better, like, just kind of be self-aware of what you're doing every day, and say like, okay, well, what time am I waking up? What time am I going to bed? What am I eating? Who am I hanging out with? What does my environment and my circle look like? And then if you start to change those things, then you'll be surprised at how exponentially that can just change everything for you.
Yeah, I agree. It says you can build so much momentum that way. And I know for me, with even just starting to shift my perspective to go down a different path than the one I was on, not to say it was a bad path, but I read the book Think and Grow Rich. I knew that there was something more I wanted, but I had literally no idea. So I decided to start the podcast, and I would just go and knock on mansion house doors and ask the people if they would do an interview, like, how do you make money? Can you talk with me for an hour?
Yeah.
And that's literally where I started, having completely no idea of what I wanted to do. Thought you had to be a real estate agent to get into real estate, didn't even consider it. And then I started interviewing these people, and it's like, oh, there's like a different side of this, investing. Okay, then this, and then this, and I met this person. And it's just literally, you just start swinging, and eventually something hits. And that's, I mean, it sounds like kind of what you did as well.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. Like, I don't have a podcast, but I think it's one of the coolest things anybody can do, because you're meeting so many people and like getting so many perspectives in a short amount of time. Because I think what a lot of people do is they'll DM somebody on Instagram, or they'll ask a friend and be like, hey man, can I pick your brain? Or like, can you tell me how you make money, or this or that? And, wealthy people or successful people, they don't have a whole lot of time or time is the most valuable resource to them. So like, it's not any disrespect to you, but they don't want to sit around and go get coffee with you and tell you how they made $1 million. Like they just don't. But if you kind of shift the way it's done and you have a podcast and you're like, hey, I see that you've made a couple $1,000,000. Would you like to be on my podcast and share your story to provide value for other people? That's a totally different way of going about it. And then you're able to ask those same questions, but in a way where it's all like value oriented. And then you're still meeting these people, you're getting the insights, and then they're able to do something to like provide value, which like they want to do, and they want more exposure for their brand. So like it's good for everybody. So like if you're talking to somebody, lead with value or see how you can help them, or start a podcast. I think that's so cool. As opposed to just like, hey man, how do I make money? Or, let me pick your brain over coffee. And it's like, dude, like, I'm sorry, but a lot of people ask me that. I can't just go get coffee with everybody and share all the secrets. Like, if you want to pay for my time, great. Or if you want to like help me and we work together, that's different.
Yeah. That's exactly how I see it. Because I mean, even if like I'm looking at it from another way of, it's just tracking my progress, and the internet is going to be there for a while. I'll have all these videos for who knows how many years of me having these hour-long conversations with mostly people I'm not qualified to talk to at all. Really, they hear a podcast and their marketing brain kicks in or something, and they talk to some Joe Schmo that just wants to learn. But like if you go to my first video that I did, I'm asking some really like low-level, simple questions, and then I'm asking more in-depth questions as I'm learning. So I think it's going to be cool, in 20 years from now to look back and see myself when I'm 22 years old, and kind of what it turns into. And then also everyone else can see it. It's going to be on the internet, just hours of conversations. Like I think, I'm not a direct example of this yet, but with the information that I talk about, like for example, what we've talked about today, or, Tim Brodz, who's going to be worth $1 billion, like, the information's there to be able to create something insane. Like if you put the stuff that the people I'm talking to, like you are saying, to work, who knows what can happen? Like even what you've done, that's incredible. So that's really the main idea behind it.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. And I would encourage everybody to make content or document their process, because it teaches you so much about yourself, and then you don't know who you're going to meet from it, whether it be a podcast, or you just like vlogging your process and be like, hey, I'm cold calling today. We're going to document these cold calls, or like, today's my first day in real estate. I'm going to call somebody for the very first time. Like, imagine how valuable that would be if you look back 10 years from now and you've got a $10 million portfolio, and you look back at that call of like your first call. Like that's so cool. And then like you get to like just understand more of yourself, your story. You get to share that with other people and be like, yeah, man, this was me, 10 years ago, and now I'm here. And you get to, other people get to see that, you get to see that. So I think, I love it.
That's great. What are a few books that you recommend people to read that have helped you in business, life, just perspective, anything?
Yeah. I think Atomic Habits by James Clear is a really good book. That resonated with me a ton. I think there's a quote or a statistic in that book that's like, if you get 1% better every day, I think you'll be 27 times better by the end of the year. So it talks a lot about the compound effect. And a lot of people talk about the compound effect in money. So like compound interest in your investments, but they don't talk about it in your personal life. So like, what if you get 1% better in the gym every day, or 1% better on your health, or your time management, your money management? That compounds too. So that's a really good book. The One Thing by Gary Keller is a really good book. I probably need to reread that, but it just talks about like focusing on one thing. And there's different mindsets between like, double down on one thing versus like diversify and have your hands in all this stuff. But I think especially starting out, like go hard on one thing, one skill set, and focus on that for a long time, because that's going to get you a lot further than trying to dabble in a bunch of different things. Because that's like the man who chases one rabbit catches the rabbit. The man who chases 5 rabbits catches 0. So that's big. And a problem that I have a lot is I see all these opportunities and I'm like, oh man, I need to be involved in crypto and real estate and e-commerce and all these different opportunities we have. And especially now with social media, it's amplified so much more because you see all this stuff. And if you follow successful people, which is good, it's almost like a disservice because your mind's just racing and you're like, oh man, I need to do Shopify, or I need to do Amazon, or I need to wholesale, I need to flip, like this way's better, that way's better. So I would say like pick one thing and focus on it. There's a big lesson from that. And then some others that like come to mind, maybe like Relentless. I forget the author, but Tim Grover, Relentless is really good. And then I just read a book of The Four Agreements. The Four Agreements I really liked. It's more of a spirituality book, but that was really good. So I'd say, yeah, some of those would be my recommendations.
All right, everyone's got some homework to do. Go read those books. I've heard of a few of those and heard a lot of good things, so that's good. Well, because this is the Get Wealth podcast, I always ask, what's your definition of wealth?
That's a really good question. I would say my definition of wealth is absolute abundance in all areas of your life. So I would say health, wealth, love, and happiness, just complete abundance. Because I think you can be wealthy in money, but you can be lacking in the other areas. So like if you have abundance in money, but your health is suffering, you've got terrible relationships with your family and friends, it's not a good way to live. So I would say true wealth is just abundance in everything. So you've got money, you've got peace of mind, most importantly, and you've got love and meaningful relationships, and you've got health, and you can wake up and smile every day.
That's great. I completely agree. Well, listen, man, I really appreciate you coming on the Get Wealth podcast. I think we've covered enough topics and you've provided enough value for people to chew on for more than enough time. So I'll let people kind of process all that after watching this, and I think it's a good place to call it. So yeah, awesome. Man, thanks for your time. And where can people find you? Websites, social media, that sort of thing?
Yeah, sure. So Ryan Huber on YouTube, on Instagram at It's Ryan Huber, TikTok at It's Ryan Huber. And yeah, thank you so much for your time, man. And this was a pleasure.
All right, Ryan Huber, everybody, get wealthy.